Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Log Show here on YouTube. I am your host, Logan Lykeb, here on this beautiful Tuesday, August 12th, and I am excited to be here talking about sports. We have officially begun the NFL preseason. Week 1 of the preseason has happened. Week 2 begins on Friday with a lot of fun stuff happening this week, especially in this New York, New Jersey area in the preseason, because you have the Jets-Giants preseason game that everyone loves. And the one thing that everyone loves about preseason in general is overhyping rookie performances, especially in that first preseason game, and I will be doing that here today. I will be overreacting, underreacting, and properly reacting to all of those rookie performances that happened. Shedeur Sanders against the Carolina Panthers, Jackson Dart against the Buffalo Bills, Cam Ward against, who would the Titans play? Cam Ward against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You had Jalen Milroe play pretty well over there in Seattle. We'll talk about all that. I'm going to talk about the Yankees for a little bit. I'll probably start with them. And then we will do the second half of our NFL predictions. We did the NFC last week. We will do the AFC this week. And also included this week, my playoff predictions. And also, what I didn't include about the NFC last week that I added for the AFC this week, so I added these for the NFC this week, is two teams in the divisions, or in the conference, that I'm going to call the Rocket of the conference, where they could blow up, which most of these Rockets I predicted to blow up, but they could definitely shoot to the moon. They have potential. They have the right pieces there that they could surprise a lot of people and maybe go on runs that people don't expect. So I'll give my two Rockets per the NFC, per the AFC, and that's how we'll wrap up today. Maybe talk a little bit about that week 2, about the Jets-Giants going into it, what I expect going into Saturday and stuff like that. We'll see. But here we are. So I do want to start today talking about, like I said, the Yankees. I said I was going to start with that. I'm going to start with that. I'm going to start with the Yankees. It's pretty simple, right? The New York Yankees have not played very well as of recently, or at least as of the month of July. You know, we could always say that. But as of the month of July, the New York Yankees have played absolutely atrocious. Now, last night, luckily, they get the win against the Minnesota Twins. They win 6-2. I have it written in my notes as death, taxes, and Yankees beating the Minnesota Twins. Since 2015, just in general, the Yankees have always really beat the Twins. They're 44-16 against Minnesota since 2015. So, I saw everyone on the internet saying it too. If the Yankees, lost to the Twins, if they lose this series to the Twins, then they're in a hole because, like I just said, they've absolutely dominated the Twins over the past 10 years of baseball. No matter how good or bad the Twins have been that year, the Yankees always beat the Twins. But outside of the Twins, you have that Astros series that they win that game in the middle where they played okay. You have the Rangers series where they do what they normally do and they play terrible for the first 2 games and then win the third. You have the Marlins series, which we talked about last week. So, not everything has really been clicking for the Yankees. Last night looked like stuff was clicking when you see Belly, even though he only goes 1 for 4, he hits the home run. Jazz hits a home run. Giancarlo hits a home run. Ben Rice hits a home run. Will Warren actually has a pretty decent outing with 7 strikeouts through almost 6.5 innings. Only 2 earned runs, 3 hits. Weaver does what the Weave Master does. You know what I mean? The Web Weaver, they like to call him. The Web Weaver. Because he's weaving your dreams. The Dream Weaver, sorry. I call him both. I call him the Web Weaver, too, because he puts you in some sticky situations. That's what I like. But, whatever you want to call him, Dream Weaver, Web Weaver, Luke Weaver, they play the Star Wars, they like to call him Luke, like the whole Star Wars thing when he comes out. He did pretty well in his inning and a third, I think it was yesterday, just about. And then Bednar gets the not statistical close because of how much they were up, but the close in that game. And Bednar one of the only people since that trade deadline that we were so hyped for. I was personally super hyped for Camilo Doval, who I was a huge fan of when he was in San Francisco. He has not been playing well recently. Obviously, they get Bird. Bird got sent down to the minors. And then you have Bednar. Bednar's been playing well. Caminaro's been playing very, very subpar coming off the bench for the Yankees. So the trade deadline hasn't been as great as you want, but you do get that great win against the Twins yesterday. So hopefully you could start putting it together. You know, historically, the Yankees have struggled in this month of August. Over the past 5 years, they have a 48% winning percentage in the month of August. They're under 500. You know, it's the same thing for July. They've historically struggled in July. You have Judge right now also somewhat struggling since his injuries, 4 for 19 in his first 6 games coming back, playing that DH spot. So you're in a weird spot as the Yankees because you're sitting there, you know, your last time I checked, you know, you're 6 games out of out of Toronto. You're 2.5 games back of Boston. It's or a game and a half back. I apologize, I did my math wrong. You're a game and a half back on Boston. You're in a weird spot where obviously historically you have done bad in the month of August, but you need a very, very good month of August here. You're sitting here with 63 wins. Last year you were the first team to 100. You know you're not going to be that this year. You're not. It's probably going to be the Dodgers or Milwaukee. If Milwaukee stays hot. So what we have going here for us in New York is you need to do what you haven't done over the past few years, and you have to have a good August. You have to. Because if you struggle in August, if you go under 500 in this month of August, and that I didn't look up the upcoming schedule, but like I said, like if you struggle in this month of August where you have Minnesota, you have Tampa Bay. Oh, I did talk about this last week. You have Boston at the end of the month in a 4-game series. You go to St. Louis after this Minnesota series. You got to put some stuff together, hopefully, here for if you're the Yankees. You know, I think they could hopefully put together, if they go to St. Louis, if they could continue doing what they did yesterday against Minnesota, which, as I said, they're 44 and whatever against Minnesota. They're 44 and 16 over the past 10 years against Minnesota. So I expect them to take at least one of these next 2 games against Minnesota, hopefully both of the games, and they complete a sweep. Then you go to St. Louis. Hopefully, I believe you could win that series. I know you could beat Tampa Bay in this 2-game series that are makeup games, I'm pretty sure, because it's a 2-game series. I've never seen that. You know. And then to end the month, you play Washington, who you should definitely beat, Chicago White Sox, who you should definitely beat, and then right before that, you have the Boston Red Sox, and it's the most important series of arguably the year is going to be that Red Sox series in Yankee Stadium, the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. That is going to be arguably the most important series of the year, looking at it, looking down the stretch. You know, you played the Blue Jays in September, yeah, but like I said, you're 6.5 games back at Toronto. You need to make a run at Toronto before I could call that series more important than this Boston series. Because if you don't play well against Boston, then that Blue Jays series is a wash because you're not catching Toronto. But if you could put together some wins against Boston too, and you could play well in this month of August for once as the New York Yankees, which you, like I said, you haven't done historically, and over the past 5 years, you haven't been great in the month of August. You want to put that together, get this win as the schedule is coming up. You know, hopefully Judge could start putting stuff together. That's going to be a big key to it, especially when you get to Boston at home. It's you need a player like Aaron Judge. You know, you can't have him hitting 4 for 12 or 4 for 16, whatever I said it was. Why am I blanking? Or 4 for 19. Sorry, I have it written down. You can't have him hitting 4 for 19. You know, he's got to have to start putting it together. And yes, it's only been 6 games since he came back. He was out for 10 days. He had an elbow injury that we were scared was Tommy John at first, and we're lucky that it wasn't. We laid back off of it. Like I said, we're happy it wasn't the Tommy John surgery. But what you have now is a Yankees team that can't struggle while they're struggling, obviously. We know they're struggling. It's an obvious statement for me to sit here and go, the Yankees are struggling. You know what I mean? Everyone knows that. If you watch a lick, if you listen to a lick of people talk about baseball, you know the Yankees are struggling. You know, if you live in the area, you know the Yankees are struggling. It's not rocket science to figure that out. But what's also not rocket science to figure out is you have everything you need in front of you in this month of August. And we talked about, I said multiple times about how they struggle in this month of August. You have everything in front of you. You have a 2-game series against Tampa that's winnable. You have this series against Minnesota that's extremely winnable. You have a series against St. Louis in St. Louis that's extremely winnable. And then you have Boston at the end of the month, that if you could win these series before Boston, gain this confidence, and then catch up to Boston, if you win these series, hopefully Boston continues to lose. You're only a game and a half back on them. If you win the series against Boston and it stays even, you at least have guaranteed yourself that you're above Boston and you're in the first wild card spot. And then we could talk about that series at the beginning of September against Toronto and how important that is when you're 2.5 games back on them. Not 6. You know, when you're 6 games back, you know, and if I watch us struggle against St. Louis and it's the same problems we have and Judge isn't putting it together, isn't hitting because I'm not looking past Minnesota, but I'm confident after what I saw last night that we can come out of Minnesota well. So looking at St. Louis after that, are you upset or not upset? Sorry. I'd be like going into St. Louis after that. I'd be upset to see Judge continue his post-injury struggles. I'd be upset to see Volpe and Caminero and Jazz and these guys make these fundamental mistakes on the bases and in the field. You can't do it anymore. And everybody on the radio is saying it. Everyone's saying it that like, oh, you can't get in people's faces anymore. I really hope that behind the scenes that Aaron Boone is sitting there and is getting in the Yankees' faces. Everyone knows we don't know what's happening behind the scenes. Nobody does. No one's there behind closed doors besides Aaron Boone and the players and the other coaches. And they're not going to come out and tell everybody that's happening behind everything that's happening behind closed doors because that's too much information for the public to have. And he came out the other day and had the whole speech about the other team in 2023 that missed the playoffs and that he didn't feel the same way about that team that he feels about this team, that this team has the pieces. Of course this team has the pieces. Are you looking at this roster? Yes, this team has the pieces to go on a run. With Cody Bellinger playing the way he's been playing this year. With Aaron Judge the way that he was playing before the injury. Giancarlo Stanton starting to, really getting a flow. I was super against him in the field. It hasn't gone atrociously bad. I will say yet, but it hasn't gone atrociously bad to have Giancarlo over there in the field. Not only that, you have... you have these pieces. You got Bednar who's starting to click together. You have Ben Rice who's been having an excellent season. Trent Grisham who's been having an excellent season. Paul Goldschmidt's not an MVP candidate at all, but he's way better than Anthony Rizzo was last year or whoever else you were throwing out there at first base last year. This is 100% a better roster than that 2023 roster, too. Obviously it is. So obviously this team has the more pieces to go on the run here. And not only that, I genuinely feel like when it comes to this month of August, the run that you need to be that team that everyone expected you to be, that made the World Series last year. Don't forget that. As ugly as the World Series was, especially after that Game 5, absolute collapse. This is a team that made the World Series last year and had the same expectations going into the year. And you have the run to show that you have those continuous expectations again, that you can live up to them this year. You have the run laid out in front of you with this series against Minnesota at home right now, with the series in St. Louis, and then Boston right after. You have a 2-game series against Tampa Bay as a warm-up in between. 2 games in between. with Tampa in between. There's a nice little warm up, and then after that, what you got with the New York Yankees there is which, as of the point of that series, will be the most important 4 games that the Yankees play all year against Boston, or 3 games that they play this year against Boston on Thursday, it's 4 games. On Thursday the 21st, Friday the 22nd, Saturday the 23rd, and Sunday the 24th. It will be, up to that point, the most important 4 games of this year the Yankees play, hands down, against Boston. And you have the run set up in front of you that if you can win before that, beat St. Louis, win at least 2 games in St. Louis, win both those games against Tampa Bay, and then go at home against your rival, a team we all hate, the Boston Red Sox, go through that and win that series. Technically, you're a game and a half back, so if you go 2-2, depending on what happens beforehand, you might take that lead still. But I don't want that. I want you to win the series outright. I don't want it to need a rubber match later, when we play again at the end of the year. No. I want it straight up. I want this right now at home. I want us to win 3 of those 4 games and make a statement. Make a statement if you are the New York Yankees. That's what you need to do. People love statements, man. And statements were also made across the NFL. I'm not going to lie. A lot of statements were made this week across the NFL. According to a lot of people, at least. At least according to a good handful of people. The people who say that preseason means all. That obviously, Ashton Genty not performing well when he played with the Raiders earlier last week. And Shedeur Sanders having 2 touchdowns means that Shedeur Sanders should have went number 1 overall. And Ashton Genty's an absolute bust. Because that happened in week 1 of the preseason, right? No, that is not true. But we will act like it is, because it's fun to. It is so fun to do. So we will talk about the rookies. I have a handful of rookies that I was able to watch film on, a couple film breakdowns on. Those rookies I have actual grades for. Then I have another list of rookies that I just read that had notable performances, but I didn't necessarily watch or pay attention to every snap that they have. 3 of them are linemen, so it's hard for me to kind of key into the linemen while watching. Not a lot of people have a lot of film on the linemen, and it got to a point where I was watching so much film yesterday after watching all the quarterbacks and running backs. Did I want to go watch Kelvin Banks film as much as I'm a Saints fan? No, I didn't. I'll watch it later and see what I think. But I didn't feel like grading him. Same thing with Will Campbell, the tackle in New England. Same thing with Armin Mbu, who got drafted to the Jets. Those guys, I just didn't watch film on. There's a couple other ones, and then also like a couple other players I'll talk about for a little bit. We'll get on Abdul Carter, stuff like that in a little bit. He just didn't really play that much. But, I mean, you know what, Vin? That's actually a good question. We'll talk about that for a second. I didn't really have that in the docket, But before we really get into football, I'll get back on the rookies in a little bit. I think the UFC Paramount merger is absolutely, great for the sport. Rest in peace, crack streams. Rest in peace, 1-2-3 movies. Rest in peace, whatever you used to watch your streams on. Now that we can admit that, FCC, I didn't say that, but that we all used to, at least allegedly. That's what I mean. Allegedly watch UFC on. I definitely bought everything. I definitely didn't watch anything on there. Allegedly we used to use Stream East and crack streams and all that, but. Yeah, I think the UFC Paramount merger is absolutely great for the sport. You're at a spot in a lot of sports where with Netflix and streaming services and you saw WWE kind of do this first. I know they're not very popular in a real sports, but pay-per-views just aren't good for business. Not a lot of people love the pay-per-view model. The pay-per-view model has gone away. Even in boxing, you see Jake Paul going over to Netflix and the Amanda Serranos and those days and events going over to Netflix now in boxing. Not only that, now in UFC going over to Paramount, you have that. Now it's just so much more accessible. One, as Paramount as a company, you love to see it because as much as we'll hate it as customers, you have a valid excuse to now raise prices. So you can slightly raise the prices. You know, you need the premium version to be able to get these UFC live events, not the ad version, this and that. You know, they have workarounds where the UFC still gets their percentage of a little bit of extra cash through profit through these streaming rights. But it's just you get where what you have with, you know, you saw, like I said, WWE did it first. They're just not as popular among sports fans. That's what I said. I didn't say real sport over there, right? Joe trying to call me out down there. But you know, you saw they had a lot of success with that when they go over to Paramount or the WWE network at first and put all their live events over there, and it's just so much more accessible to the average fan and the average person to watch and get into your sport. And especially when you have a sport like UFC right now that is at a crossroads in its business, because you have seen the peak of the UFC and we are seeing a decline of the UFC. Now, as much as the UFC is as popular as it's ever been, and their pay-per-views were breaking numbers that were astronomically breaking numbers from before, and just consistently new gate records, new pay-per-view records over and over and over again, the sport grew, but the sport has reached its peak. You know, the sport has reached its peak, and I would say arguably the peak of the sport was when you saw Conor McGregor versus Khabib, when you saw Conor McGregor versus and you saw that Khabib run, you saw the Conor McGregor runs, you saw right before that, you saw the John Jones original run when he was young, and the UFC reached a peak, man. When you look at the popularity of the sport and the way that it was being talked about, when we got McGregor Khabib and we were getting McGregor Poirier and Khabib Poirier and Gaethje Khabib and Tony Ferguson, was he ever going to fight Khabib? That kept getting canceled. And all those title runs up and down in there. The sport has since lost its hype since then. And the ESPN deal has done nothing but kill the sport more, you know. I've experienced it personally. I don't know if anybody watching has, but I feel most UFC fans have even experienced the moments where you know, you buy the pay-per-view and you go on ESPN and it's buffering, and I'll never forget one night. I can't remember which UFC event it is. I want to say it was 308, maybe. It was something earlier this year that there was a UFC event that literally ESPN Plus crashed. Like, it just straight up crashed. And people who paid $80 for this fight couldn't watch it because ESPN Plus crashed. And it was unwatchable, even though the event was going on. Like ESPN Plus was honestly just so bad for business that, and I knew what Dana was thinking of going into that deal originally. When streaming services were just becoming big and ESPN Plus has just become a thing, you know, you have this opportunity to get this middle ground of a pay-per-view, but also you're streaming. So you're on the streaming service of ESPN Plus, but you could still charge people that extra. And then not only that, with the deal of ESPN, you have what is known as one of the biggest sports companies in the world broadcasting your thing. You know, you have the rights to now have your fighters be on SportsCenter for interviews and not have an issue with it. And you know, these big ESPN talk shows are now talking about your sport because they feel like they need to, and because it's under their broadcasting roof. So they want to, because they want the eyes there. So they want to make Stephen A. Smith talk about UFC or this and that. And it brings eyes to the sport, and it did for a while. But over time, as that pay-per-view model folded and just fell apart, it didn't work for what we had. And I think the Paramount deal is perfect for what the future of sports is. I think the pay-per-view model is absolutely dead and will be for every sport. I think it's going to be perfect. Where if you just have a Paramount Plus account, if you just have the Paramount Plus Premium, like I do for me to watch my WWE live events already, now I just get to watch UFC events. I don't got to pay $79.99. I could have all the boys over to watch UFC and not have to worry about that extra cost. And then not only that, if you're a casual fan and you're not hanging out with your friends that night, but you still have Paramount Plus, and you go on Twitter, you're hearing all about the fight, you could still go on and watch. You know how many? It's going to bring so many more eyes to the sport. It's such a great deal. For the UFC, for Paramount, for the future of live events and live sports like that. I can't wait to see how it goes. You have the big events coming up with, hopefully July 4th. They're rumored to have the UFC on the White House lawn and all this and that, and he wants to have up to 4 to 5 major events a year over there. He's already announced all that, so I'm excited to see what Dana White and the UFC will do over on Paramount. Congratulations to them on that deal. Honestly, it's going to be huge. But back to what I was talking about before I got so sidetracked about the great sport of MMA and the great promotion of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. It is the NFL rookies. And who impressed? Who didn't? Who played well? Who didn't? Honestly, just talking about week 1 as a whole before I really get into the rookies, because I only graded the rookies. Shout out Justin Fields, who played very well in those 2 quarters against the Green Bay Packers. You had a bunch of people like that in week 1 of the NFL preseason. It's just looking at some of the games, you just, some people struggled, some people didn't. I was very impressed with a good handful. I guess that counts as week 2 of the NFL preseason. I don't know. To me, it's week 1 of the full first week of the NFL preseason. That's not just a Hall of Fame game. But yeah, you have Dart, doing his whole thing over there. But not only that, you do have some non-rookies playing well. Stetson Bennett in his second year played well for the Rams against the Cowboys. You have Drake May in his first quarter play well for the Patriots. Geno Smith played well in the first quarter down there in Las Vegas. Danny Dimes didn't do so bad in Indy. So you have some of those players, so shout out to those dudes for doing well. Shout out to the non-rookies for doing well that they were able to do. But yeah, really getting into the rookies. I'm going to start with the local rookie that everybody, the New York Times is writing about it. SportsCenter is talking about it. Everybody's talking about the performance of New York Giants rookie quarterback Jackson Dart. Now, Jackson Dart, Joe, who's blowing up the chat right now, he was here yesterday watching the film with me. I also watched another film breakdown this morning on Jackson Dart's play. He went 12 for 19 with 154 yards and a touchdown against the Buffalo Bills. And that, obviously not the starting defense for the Buffalo Bills, but yes, still a Buffalo Bills team that Jackson Dart went out there and performed against. In his little time out there, I believe he had 4 drives, if I remember correctly, for the New York Giants there. And, the offense was kept simple, which it always is in week 1 of the preseason. You can never expect these crazy, crazy concepts defensively or offensively in week 1 of the NFL preseason, but you saw Jackson Dart go out there with a lot of confidence. He went out there, he made his reads very well, he read defenses very well. There were times where he was reading safeties rolling down that's very hard to see because guys are tiptoeing, and he was calling it out. He was changing protections. He was getting the ball out fast when he felt pressure or read blitzes. What I saw out of Jackson Dart is what I believed I was going to see out of Jackson Dart when he came to the NFL. Now, a lot of people are overreacting, as they always do in the NFL preseason. Is like, oh my God, he should be starting by week 6. He should be doing this. He should be doing that. And I'm not going to go that far personally. I'm not going to go that far in saying Jackson Dart should be starting anytime soon. But with what I saw in week 1 of the NFL preseason, with giving him a year to develop, learn the speed of the game, because there's times where he tries to move too fast for his own ability, and he's moving too fast, and he doesn't take a breath and slow it down because he feels like the game is so fast sometimes that you see that if he takes this year behind Russell Wilson, takes a deep breath, a nice whoo, you know what I mean? And learns the speed of the game. You know, you have Danger Russ, hopefully not corrupting his mind into, you know, corniness and Mr. Unlimited. Hopefully we don't hear Jackson Dart say that after learning from Russ, but Russ has been a very good quarterback in this league before, and he can teach Jackson Dart a whole lot. So can Jameis Winston, who people forget was in the same quarterback room as a retiring Drew Brees, and Drew Brees sat there trying to teach Jameis a way to take over the Saints, which was unsuccessful, unfortunately, for New Orleans and my Saints, but that was the plan originally. So Jameis Winston also in that room teaching Jackson Dart some tips, some tricks, and stuff like that. I think he could have an extremely, extremely successful career. I think what we saw was insanely good flashes out of Mr. Dart, and I gave him a good old B+. A nice B+. I feel like it's accurate. You know, there's only going to be one person who's above a B+, out of my whole grades. It's the second highest grade I gave out of the people I did grade. And yeah, it's just, I feel like he played very well. I think he was the most impressive rookie quarterback by far this weekend. I think he seemed very confident, very poised in the pocket. The one touchdown he threw, when you look at the film, it was a check. That was not the original play call. He checks to that streak route on the outside. He sees his receiver in man coverage and hits him with an absolute dot for a touchdown. So a lot that I saw out of Jackson Dart extremely, extremely, extremely impressed me and made me very, very, very happy to see in what I saw as a perfect draft for the New York Giants. Because also you saw in that game, I'll touch on it in his very few plays. I want to say it was 8 snaps. You saw Abdul Carter show that his presence was going to be there, and he's going to be an absolute beast. They don't need to give him a bunch of snaps to warm up. You know, Jackson Dart's getting these snaps because they don't expect him to play a whole lot this season, so they want to see what he has. Abdul Carter will play a whole lot this season, and he will be very good, and he made that very obvious in his 8 snaps that he took defensively this week. The next rookie I am grading is another rookie quarterback. This one is personal to me. It is Louisville rookie Tyler Shough over there in New Orleans playing against the Los Angeles Chargers. They lost 27-13 over there in LA, and Tyler Shough, he went 15 for 22 for 165, threw a touchdown and an interception that happened to go back for 6. And the grade that I gave my man Tyler Shough was a C+. It was interesting watching the film on Shough that I saw. Where he was, I felt that out of all of the quarterbacks that I watched, he was the one given the most complicated offense. I think they wanted to see what it would be like if he could run the offense of the regular season. I know he had a pro-style playbook at Louisville, which might help that whole situation of calling those plays and having more of a pro-style offense off rip in week 1 of the preseason instead of these quick, read the defense and get it to the person that it's supposed to go to based off what the defense is. I felt like was actually going through progressions. But the reason I also gave him a C plus is because you saw a lot of struggles there. You saw why he was definitely a second round pick, but you also saw the flashes of why a lot of people said that he was the most pro ready quarterback. He throws that pick six, and that pick six was just not a ball you could throw. It was, you know, I'm not going to lie. It was a great break on the ball by the defensive back there, Eric Rodgers, who makes the play and runs it back for six against the Saints on that play against Tyler Shook. But looking at the replay multiple times and looking at that play two or three times when I did yesterday, it's a break on the ball that was very obvious and was very, as well of a play as it was by the defensive back for the Chargers, it was just as bad as a throw as it was a good play by the defensive back. It was a ball that shouldn't have been thrown. It was a read that was easily known that safety started, or that defensive back started to make a break to cut off the route before the ball was even thrown. So it's something that should have been seen at a Shook, but sadly he was just not able to see it at all. So that gets really rough for him. He comes back the next drive, throws a big, deep interception on what seemed to be a blown coverage by the Los Angeles Chargers, hits a receiver in stride, gets a nice, big, deep play. So definitely showed his flashes of what we needed him to show this year, but he didn't necessarily impress like Dart did. Or like some of the other people I will talk about in a little bit did. So I gave my man Tyler Shook a good old C+. Next grade we have is a man that a lot of people was talked about when he was drafted, when he fell in the draft and goes to the Cleveland Browns. And now he starts week 1 of the preseason. We are talking about the son of prime time, the man who holds up his watch, the one, the only, Shedeur Sanders. And, Shedeur, I won't say impressed, because I wasn't someone who, hey, we'll get there, Mr. Green Bay fan, talking about Matt Golden. Let me talk about the actual important quarterbacks, not someone who had one reception, all right? Shedeur, I won't say impressed, because I wasn't someone who was super low on Shedeur, nor was I super high. I will say he definitely played better than I expected him to. Now, again, he was playing against a defense that wasn't, the best defense in the world in Carolina, and you're not really getting many starters out there, even though you're probably getting more than average playing against a team like Carolina. But, you have the situation of Shedeur coming out there, and he looked good, man. He looked accurate. He looked poised in the pocket. He did. He made his reads right. He absolutely, it felt similar to Dart or like Milroe when I talk about him in a little bit. It definitely felt like, when you look at it, you have the whole situation of, he didn't have to sit there and make many reads. There were plays. There were 100% plays that, Shedeur sat there and had to go through read number 1, read number 2. But it definitely felt like an extremely, extremely simplified offense. But I think he played well. Went out there, scored 2 touchdowns, looked very, very accurate, had a good zip on the ball, unlike, some people did. Had a very good zip on the ball, looked very accurate. His second touchdown that he throws, it's placed low on purpose, because the safety's over the top, but he's kind of back. So if you place that low, nobody could really get there. So he places a ball well there. And he definitely showed potential. And in a quarterback room that's wide open, would I be surprised if we saw Shedeur Sanders start a few NFL games this year? No, not at all. In that quarterback room, not at all. I think he'll definitely compete for that starting position against a Joe Flacco or a Dylan Gabriel or whoever is the starter there at this point. these next grades are kind of a run through because not a lot of these guys played a whole lot of plays, or if they did, were super duper impressive. But some of them were in their plays. 3 of them I have grades, or 4 of them I have grades for. The rest of them I'm just gonna list. Cam Ward, I gave him a C plus. He only played 2 drives, but it wasn't that number 1 pick. Super surprising. Like, he looked super impressive. He definitely showed his flashes. Definitely looked accurate, but 5 for 8, 67 yards. No touchdowns, nothing like that. You have a 3 and out on the first drive. Not super impressive out of our first overall pick, but he only played 2 drives, so he didn't have a lot of room to do too much. So that's what happens there. We have Jalen Milroe over there in Seattle. I give him a C minus. He went 6 for 10 with 61 yards, 3 rushes, 38 yards, but impressed a lot of people. I think he played a lot better than a lot of other rookie quarterbacks this weekend. I think he definitely looked good against Vegas. For Seattle, I think it's obvious. I mean, I don't think you have a quarterback competition up there against him and Sam Darnold, but I think Jalen Milroe showed a lot of potential of what he can be in this league. Maybe he could be a weapon. Maybe he could be a multi-tool type of player, someone that you use in a wild card like a Taysom Hill type of player. He definitely showed a lot of potential throughout that performance. Then you have Travis Hunter. He didn't play much. He only played, I believe it was 18 plays. He played 10 on offense, 8 on defense. He had 2 receptions for 9 yards on offense. On defense, he missed a tackle, looked pretty bad, got stiff arm pretty rough there on that tackle. It's a tackle in the open field that, as the cornerback, you are expected to make. So I gave Travis a C+. And then final person I graded with the highest grade of the preseason rookies was Trayvon Henderson, the running back up there in New England. He only had 1 rush, which went for 18 yards, which was a very good rush. He got a few receptions out of the backfield and did well. And he opened the game with a 100-yard kick return, which was extremely impressive. That Ohio State running back room was so good last year with him and Quinshawn Junkins. I think that Trayvon Henderson can be absolutely dangerous in this league. And then some other notable rookies that I just do want to talk about. I don't really have grades for them. I already talked about Abdul Carter for a little bit. He had 3 QB pressures, only played about 8 plays. I think he had a tackle, if I remember correctly, and showed that he was going to be impactful. Over there in Indianapolis, you had Tyler Warren, the Notre Dame tight end, show up and show out and show why he was the top tight end going into the draft, even though he wasn't the first tight end taken off the board. He had 3 receptions for 40 yards, blocked very well, had a 25-yard reception across the middle where he looked like an absolute tank. Joe wanted me to bring up Matthew Golden. I'll bring him up for a second. You have Matthew Golden. He didn't really do anything too impactful. He had 2 targets, only 1 reception for, I think it was 9 yards. Second reception, he has, or the second target, he draws a pass interference play. So I don't think it was that impressive of a performance, but he definitely showed his impact. I mean, he only played 2 drives. He only played with the starters, so he didn't have room to really make an impact in the game, especially as a wide receiver. He only had 2 targets. What impact are you making on 2 targets? And on the 2 targets, he did make an impact with a reception and a penalty drawn against Sauce Gardner. And then the 3 top O-linemen all impressed with. Will Campbell played well. Armand and Mbetu with the Jets played well. And Kelvin Banks over there in New Orleans all played well in their 2 drives that they played. I think Mbetu gave up 1 tackle for loss. I think Campbell gave up, I don't know. I think Banks gave up a sack, and then Campbell also gave up a TFL, if I remember the stats correctly. But lineman stats are so hard to find, and they're so all over the place that I don't know if those stats are completely accurate, but they definitely showed up and showed out, those 3 linemen. So those are the rookies that I was the most impressed with week 1. We got week 2 this week, Jets Giants on Saturday, a lot of stuff like that. It'll be fun to watch. It will be very fun to watch and overreact to the preseason that at the end of the day means nothing. I mean, we saw a 70-yard field goal in the Jacksonville game, and it's not even an actual record because it was the preseason. And I'm sorry, Cam Little, if you were ever watching my small podcast, I will look you in the eyes and tell you right now, you are my NFL record holder. I don't care that it was a preseason game. I don't care. You, in a live game, hit a 70-yard field goal, Mr. Little. That is one of the most impressive things I ever see. One of the most impressive things I've ever seen. 70 yards. 70 yards. 70 yards. All right, guys. And with my last 15 minutes here, what I'm going to do is a good old part two. Last week we did the NFC, and with a little bit of a recap of my NFC predictions, I have the 49ers going 10-7, the Rams at 9-8 making a wild card spot. I have the 49ers winning the NFC West at 10-7. In the NFC North, I have the Packers taking it at 12-5. Tying record-wise with the Detroit Lions, also going 12-5. But nonetheless, the Packers having a better divisional record, so the Packers will take that division. In the NFC East, I have the Philadelphia Eagles going 12-5 and winning that division, with the Commanders going 10-7 and squeezing into a wild card spot. And not only that, to finish it off, I have in the NFC South the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going 11-6 and winning that division. The rest of the teams that don't make the playoffs don't matter. For you Giants fans, I have the Giants winning 7 games. I have the Saints winning like 4. That was just for me. And then my 2 Rockets of the NFC, which I did not include in the show last week, but I will include in the show this week, are my 2 teams that I feel like can implode very easily, but also on the flip side can go to the moon if they need to. And that is, those 2 teams are, the Atlanta Falcons are one of them. I like Atlanta a lot. As much as I hate Atlanta as a Saints fan, I do feel like Atlanta has a lot of pieces that if they click together, they'll be very good. I'll get to the Steelers prediction in a minute, Joe. All right? When I get to the AFC North, the division they're in, I'll talk about the Steelers. But if we're really going to talk about it, the Atlanta Falcons real quick, just talk about how they're a rocket. They have a lot of potential. They added a lot of pieces on defense. That a defense that really struggled last year, that, yes, they lost some dudes, you know. You lose the D tackle. What's his name? I'm blanking on his name, but he went to I'm blanking. I'm so blanking. I literally know this too. But you made a lot of additions there in Atlanta. You know, you signed why am I blanking on everything I know about Atlanta right now? I don't know why. I literally watched so much about the Atlanta Falcons last night, and I had so much on them, and I'm just blanking on all of it right now. But they made a lot of good signings. I'm just forgetting a lot of the names, I'm going to be honest. But with Penix going into his second year, their OC going into his second year, you do have Bijan Robinson going into his second year. A lot of players who go in, and second year is usually where you see a major fall off or a major improve. So I just see the Falcons, as much as they could fall apart, I have them at 9-8, but they could honestly sneak up and win that division. And then the other team I have as the NFC Rocket is the Chicago Bears. I think a lot of people know why. It is Leonard Floyd. Thank you, Joe. Leonard Floyd is who I was talking about, who the Atlanta Falcons got. But the other team is the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears, many similar reasons why I think they're a rocket that could easily implode, but also could go to the moon this year. You have Caleb Williams. You have Ben Johnson in his first year as a head coach. Like I just said, you have Caleb Williams going into his second year in the NFL with Rome Odunze, with DJ Moore. They made you got Joe Thuney over there on the O-line, a veteran who's won multiple Super Bowls. You have so much there in Chicago that you have a lot of potential. You have a lot of potential if you're the Chicago Bears. Now, historically, the Chicago Bears have had a lot of potential before and have blown up. Hence why I'm calling these teams that I'm highlighting here, I'm calling them Rockets. Because they could blow up off after liftoff. They could blow up after liftoff, man. But I'm telling you, those two teams, they can make it to the moon if they need to. Now on to the AFC. And for those of you tuning in, I know I usually stop at 3 o'clock. Like I'd usually cut it off here and maybe ramble for a little bit. But I think we're going to go a little bit over on time here because I really want to get these AFC predictions in. I really want to talk about a few of these teams. So, yeah. We will start here with the one that I'm going to talk probably the least about. Probably the quickest division to talk about, but a division that does have one of my Rockets of the AFC, and that is the AFC South. So for the AFC South, the way that I have it ranked is I have the Indianapolis Colts in dead last at 5-12 with their quarterback issues. You know, we don't even know who the starter is yet between Anthony Richardson, between Daniel Jones. They just have a lot going on down there in Indianapolis. Not only that, you have just so much question marks in the future of that franchise. I have no clue what's going on down there. I try to read stuff about Indianapolis and find out what's going on down there, and it seems like it's almost just like secretive what's going on down there between, you know, everyone involved down there of the Colts. Obviously, you don't have Jim Irsay involved anymore. Rest in peace, Jim Irsay. But like between Shane Steichen and I'm blanking on the GM's name right now, but I just, you know, the Colts are in very much of a limbo right now. I think I agree with you, Vin. I think Daniel Dimes is probably going to end up QB1 down there, which I don't know if that's a thing you want or if that's something you're scared of if you're Indianapolis. But, you know, I think that's something you're scared of if you're an Anthony Richardson fan down there in Indianapolis. Because if you have Daniel Jones walking in there and just stealing his starting spot like that, don't get me wrong. Daniel Jones, people forget, was still, you know, a top 5 pick. Someone who has won a playoff game before. Someone who has made a Pro Bowl before. So, you know, some of those things are surprising to a lot of people. But Daniel Jones has shown potential in the NFL. So if you're this big Anthony Richardson guy and thought Anthony Richardson was going to be great while you're down there in Indianapolis, then yes, I'd be very upset about it. But otherwise, I don't know. You know, Anthony Richardson took him out of a play last year on a 3rd down and 4 in the fourth quarter, down by 3. As a starting quarterback, you like, how do you do that? Because you're tired. So would I be surprised if Daniel Jones walks in there and takes that starting spot? No, not at all. Second to last in that division, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars, also going 5-12, but having a better divisional record. And the Jacksonville Jaguars are my team in this division. That is one of my 2 AFC Rockets. I don't know. It's just something about Jacksonville feels interesting with what could happen with Travis Hunter down there. What could happen with Trevor Lawrence and ETN and Tank Bigsby and that defense that really wasn't that impressive last year, but you've had pieces over the years on that defense that have showed up and showed out. You have a new defensive coordinator down there. You have a lot going on down there. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens between you have a lot that's going on down there between the Jaguars. It could be very interesting, and I think if they could get it all together, it could click very well down there. You know, if you have Travis Hunter just play okay as a wide receiver and you have him play very well as a cornerback, and you have someone like Brian Thomas Jr. out there, you have Tank Bigsby with help from ETN in his backfield. You have all these pieces that if the O-line and the defense can just put it together, The Jaguars can be scary for a lot of teams this year and can get a lot of sneaky wins, and I think they could be impressive and maybe even sneak a win of the AFC South against the Titans, who, the Titans don't got a lot going for them. I'm going to be honest. I don't feel like you got a lot going for you in Tennessee. As much as I do feel like they're going to go 8-9, because I think Cam Ward's going to be impressive, even though I didn't see it in the first game. I don't see a lot out of Tennessee that shows that if Jacksonville went 8-9 and Tennessee went 5-12 and they flipped records, I wouldn't be surprised. Which is what I have Tennessee going, and then I have the Texans winning that division at 10-7. It's that simple. It's that simple there. You know what I mean? It's that simple. Next division I'm gonna run through is the AFC East, just because I feel like the divisions for the rest of this get complicated. So I feel like the AFC East will be fun to talk about because, I'll be honest, I'll start at the bottom. I'll go in the same order, but I'm not gonna talk a whole lot about the Dolphins. I'm not impressed with them. I don't feel like a lot's gonna go on there, but the rest of the teams in that division are fun. And starting with the AFC East, the team I have at last currently in the AFC East, I have two teams. I have, here something special written in my notes, which is known as a Joe prediction of he has them going 9-8. I have them going 5-12. This team is my second rocket of the AFC. It is the New England Patriots. And I think it's very interesting what could happen in the New England Patriots. That's why I have them as one of my rockets of the division, because as much as I have them at 5-12 and I feel like it can all implode, I feel like 9-8 is not a stretch at all with that Joe's prediction. I don't feel like his prediction is a stretch either. I don't. Because you have Drake May, who put it all together last year. You have Stephon Diggs coming in. You have, Trayvon Hendrickson, who performed well in his first game. You have Antonio Gibson. You have Vrabel coming in as a head coach. You have some good pieces on defense, like Christian Gonzalez. This Patriots team is very interesting. You bring in Will Campbell as a rookie. This Patriots team is very, very interesting. They are a sleeper team that could be very, very, very good this year. It'll be interesting to see what they could do. Their boom or bust potential is insane because they could blow up week 1 or they could go on a 6-game win streak, and I wouldn't be surprised. What that Patriots team, it's a scary team. I'm not going to lie. I have them currently at 5-12 just because I don't think they're quite there yet. I think there's improvements to still be made. I think they'll improve, but I think there's improvements to be made overall. But with Vrabel and all that down there, I think they're going to be scary. Second to last in the AFC East, I do have your local, your favorite, your best New York Jets. Jets, 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 Jets. I do have them falling to third in the division at a record of 7-10. Diggs' 1,500 yards is crazy, Joe. 1,500 yards is crazy. I'll put him at 11, maybe. Maybe he'll squeeze over 1,000. He's somewhere from 1,000 to 1,100. Like 900 to 1,100 this year. No more than 1,100. There's no way. 1,500 yards is crazy for Stephon Diggs. But on to the New York Jets. The New York Jets I have going 7-10. I think they will make a huge improvement this year. I think they drafted well with Mbetu. I think you have Justin Fields, who impressed in his first game against Green Bay. You have Braylon Allen, who they played a lot in that game against Green Bay, who's very good. You have Garrett Wilson. Sauce Gardner gave Matthew Golden a welcome to the NFL type of 2 drives. I think as a whole, your defense played too sloppy. You had a lot of penalties. And you can't have that, especially bringing in someone like a defensive coordinator like Aaron Glenn. You played way too sloppy defensively in that game, but Aaron Glenn, with that coaching staff, I'm confident that the Jets will improve this year. I'm confident that Justin Fields will find a home in New York this year, and the Jets finish at 7-10, man. After that, we got the Dolphins at 8-9. I think the Dolphins, you got Tua coming back off of a double concussion season. You have Tyreek Hill hopefully not getting arrested before games. Jalen Waddle, hopefully you have that defense and you have the pieces on that defense you need to come back to just click down and be good. Yeah, I can't remember what's his name, the defensive end that's torn his Achilles like 2 years in a row. I know Joe will tell me in the comments because he'll remember. But, yeah, I'm not big with the Dolphins. I don't know. I think their running backs will do well like they always do because they are a big speed team and speed kills at the running back position in the modern NFL. So I think you'll have people like Mostert and Achane still go for great games. I think if you go for fantasy players, that you'll have they'll still be decent fantasy players, those two. That's who I was thinking of. And then, defensively, you're hoping that Jordan Phillips can click back to what he was before. You're hoping that bringing in Minkah Fitzpatrick is going to be a big boost to that defense. I really don't know. I have them at 8-9. They're one of those teams that I just don't know. 8-9 is how it felt because they just feel so middle. They just feel so mid that they're either 9-8 or 8-9. It's just such a middle of the pack team. It's just meh. Everything about that team, when I sit here and I think about every piece that the Miami Dolphins have, that small Super Bowl window that people felt like they had is over. It's just meh. It's just meh. I really don't know what's going to happen. And then, now winning that division, I have the reigning AFC East champions, the Buffalo Bills, winning the AFC East yet again, with former MVP Josh Allen leading the way. Obviously, you just have so many pieces, such good coaching down there. And when you have a player like Josh Allen, it's hard to beat your team. It doesn't matter who you have catching the ball. And then James Cook. James Cook helps a lot. Don't get me wrong. People didn't think he was very good for a year or two. And then he came on the scene last year. James Cook, he helps a lot, don't he? And then defensively, you had Joey Bosa. You still got a lot of good pieces in that secondary. I really, really like... I really like a lot of the people that the Bills brought in this year. And then you still have Dustin Knox. You still have Tre'Davious White. It's a good team, man. You release old Von Miller and you trade it for... and then you end up getting, Joey Bosa. I think this Bills team is scary, man. I don't know. I don't know if Keon Coleman's a bust yet. I don't know if he's necessarily a bust yet. I don't think he had the year that we were all expecting last year, but I don't think he's a bust. Obviously, Khalil Shakir is a beast. You lose Mac Hollins to New England, but I don't think Keon Coleman's a bust. I really don't. I don't know. I'm a big fan of that Bills team. But we're going to move on to the next division. And the next division I'm going to talk about is the good old AFC West, baby. The AFC West. This one is going to be a fun one this year. The AFC West, I feel like, is going to be the most fun division in arguably all football this year. It's usually the AFC North. It might be the AFC West this year. I have all teams in the AFC West over 6 wins. I have the Raiders in last, but I think the Raiders with Geno Smith and Pete Carroll, and you bring in Ashton Genty. You have some good wide receivers over there in Vegas. I think Vegas could put together 7 wins. I argued that they might be a rocket over Jacksonville because I think they could be sneaky good depending on how well Geno plays and how well Max Crosby and that defense plays. I'm not a huge fan of their secondary over there. That's not a secondary I'm a huge fan of. But this division is going to be fun this year, man. Not only that, right under them, I have at 9-8, I have the Los Angeles Chargers, who just beat the Saints in a preseason game. I think the Chargers got a little worse. I mean, obviously, you bring back Keenan Allen, which is fun, but you do lose players like Joey Bosa. I think the defense got significantly worse. I think the pass rush got slightly worse. I think that's the issue for LA. I think the offense for the Chargers is going to be one of the most entertaining in the league, where you have Omari and Hampton, Keenan Allen, Lad McConkey, Justin Herbert. You got all these pieces. You got so many pieces over there in LA. So I think it's going to be fun to watch this team. I just think defensively, they're going to lack. I think it's going to feel like a team that felt like the Bengals last year, where they're going to be putting up 30. They're going to be losing games 42-35 just because their defense can't catch up. I just don't see a world where they go crazy. Joe Alt, too, yeah, like him mixed with Omari and Hampton, that lineman, like that line mixed with Omari and Hampton, led by Joe Alt. It's just that offense is going to be fun to watch. It's the defense that terrifies me in Los Angeles. The defense terrifies me, and I know if any coach could get that defense together and have a smash mouth defense, no matter who the names are on that defense. God damn, is Jim Harbaugh your guy to get that done? But that defense scares me, man. That defense scares me. I got the Broncos in second in that division. I think they're only going to improve this year. I think they're going to feel a lot better this year. I think Bo Nix in his second year in the league is just going to look so much better. It took him a second to really get going last year, and I think from week 1 this year, Bo Nix is going to be firing at all cylinders. Again, another place where you have a good set of receivers. You bring in people like J.K. Dobbins at running back. You bring in a lot of pieces if you are you bring in a lot of pieces if you're the Broncos. You bring in Evan Ingram, you bring in Trey Greenlaw and Hufanga, both from San Francisco. They brought in a lot of people. Like, they brought in a lot of people over there in Denver. Sean Payton now in his 3rd full season there. His 2nd one with Bo Nix. I think they're just going to look a lot cleaner this year. I think they're going to look a lot better. I think they made a lot more improvements. I have them sitting there at 11-6 this year. And the only reason I don't have them winning the division that they're in is because they're in the same division as the Kansas City Chiefs, who are the Kansas City Chiefs. But if they play a regular season like they did last year, I wouldn't be surprised if that flips. And I'll tell you that right now. Because I have the Chiefs winning a lot of games next year. Don't get me wrong, I do. But that's behind the will of Patrick Mahomes and the coach of Andy Reid. And the will of a few other players, like a Nick Bolton and a few other players that they have there that have been a consistent piece for them. Besides that, the coaching over there is just so consistent that they find a way to win with whoever is there, because winning is in their blood. Winning is in their blood over there in Kansas City. So that's how I have that division panning out. Is the Chiefs at 14-3 winning the division, the Broncos at 11-6 in second, Chargers at 9-8 in third, and then the Las Vegas Raiders trailing up the rear, still with a solid record of 7-10. And now for the final division, the most fun division, the AFC North. I know I just said the AFC West is going to be the most fun division. I believe that, but the historically most fun division is the AFC North, where you got the Browns, you got the Steelers, you got the Bengals, and you got the Ravens. Now, I'm going to start in the rear. I'm going to start, obviously, I think everyone has this team in last in the division. I think they have pieces that could play well, but I'm going to bring up the rear with the Cleveland Browns here. You have no quarterback. Your quarterback is either Shador Sanders or Joe Flacco, and you don't know who it is. You have nothing. Cleveland is back to what it was. You have Jerry Jeudy and Myles Garrett. That's about it. Denzel Ward. That's about it. Jerome Ford. Okay. I don't like this team at all. I think they're going to struggle a lot this year, especially without a good signal caller. Not only without a good signal caller, but with practically no signal caller. I'm going to have that team of that Cleveland Browns team. I have them sitting there bringing up the rear at 3-14. After that, in third place, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers at 9-8. I think they are going to, I don't know. That's how I'll put the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know. I don't think they're going to struggle, but I think it all depends on what offensive coordinator, what's his name? Old Falcons head coach. I'm blanking on his name. But their offensive coordinator over there, it all depends on how he does and how he calls it. I don't think this is an offense that could be a big play offense. Even if Aaron wants it to be, I don't think it could be an offense that we've traditionally seen Aaron Rodgers run. I think it has to be an offense we've traditionally seen the Pittsburgh Steelers win. For them, Arthur Smith, that's who their offensive coordinator is. I think that they have to run, what they've traditionally run is the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is a smash mouth offense behind Jaylen Warren, behind DK Metcalf as your one wide receiver with the two tight end set and Aaron Rodgers under center, and give me two tight ends, a fullback, a running back, and just DK out there. I think that's the way you have success if you're Pittsburgh. You let your defense carry you. You know what I mean? You have Jalen Ramsey and TJ Watt and these linebackers and all these pieces that you've had for a while that have been pushing you to that 9-8 record for a while. You keep doing what you've been doing in Pittsburgh. You don't change it because Aaron came. As long as you keep doing what Pittsburgh does, you'll win 9 games. At least. You'll win 9 games. As long as you do what you have always done, you'll win 9 games. Second in the division, I have also at 9-8, I have the Cincinnati Bengals, and this is one that is a very bold choice. Don't get me wrong. I know that defense is in a tough spot. That defense might be the worst in the league, especially if they don't re-sign Trey Hendrickson. But it's a situation where I feel like Joe Burrow was upset last year. Joe Burrow willed them to a lot of wins last year that I feel like that they'll get this year. I think the defense will be coached better this year. I think even though pieces-wise and names-wise, there's not a whole lot there in Cincinnati, I think that they're going to want to do better for Joe. I think they saw the year that Burrow had last year, and they're going to want to do better for Joe Burrow, and I think they will do at least slightly better for Joe Burrow, and I think that gets them to 9-8. I think they play well this year. I genuinely believe in the Bengals this year to play well, to squeeze into the playoffs, to really have it all click. I really do. And finally, winning that division, I have the Baltimore Ravens at 11-6. No surprise to anyone, I feel like. I think they're very well. So with that popping up on the screen right now should be, there you guys go. As all of you are watching, you guys are seeing what I have as my NFL playoff predictions. This is just a way too early Super Bowl prediction. I do have the Buffalo Bills winning the Super Bowl, as you can see there. But a fun one going down. I have the Commanders-Eagles rematch happening in the divisional round. I have the Packers-Lions getting a third matchup, and the Packers winning all three against the Detroit Lions. I have it all coming together for the Buffalo Bills finally in an AFC championship where they go to play the Green Bay Packers in the Super Bowl, where they are just too much for that Jordan Love, the young Jordan Love led Packers team. I think that Packers team is too young to get over the hump yet. I think they may be back soon, though. And that is what I have as my NFL playoff prediction. Yes, Vin, the Jets missed the playoffs. Who would have thought is correct? Who would have thought is absolutely correct? That's what I have for you guys today. That was my playoff predictions, my AFC predictions. I talked about the rookies, the Yankees. We got it all today. I can't wait to talk to you guys again next week. Again, I'm still trying to get the whole TikTok thing settled, so I'll see when I could get something up there. We will see you guys all next week. Thank you guys tuning in, even though I go 15 over. We got a lot next week. It's going to be fun. I'm going to be talking about a football game I saw live. I'm going to be able to do it a lot. Hopefully the Yankees are winning by then. I will see you guys all. Have a fantastic week. See you later.